In Season 18, a new game mode will be added to Overwatch Stadium. But what are some other game modes that they could use? Let's have a look. Later this summer, in Season 18, a new game mode is set to be added to Overwatch Stadium. Payload Race. A mode very familiar to people that used to play Team Fortress 2. You basically have a payload for each team, and the team needs to make sure their payload will advance, while also trying to stop the enemy payload from getting to the endpoint first. I personally think it is going to be a bit of a slow race, but you know, it is an interpretation of the payload mode that actually works in Stadium, because you don't need that mirror round that you need in normal competitive. Now, where the defenders become the attackers, since you have two payloads. And Stadium does need those shorter, quicker matches. Otherwise, it's going to take too long. On the other hand, having a nice amount of variety is going to help to keep Stadium interesting. So, in this video, I want to see what other creative and sometimes slightly unusual game modes they could add to that Stadium lineup. And who knows, some of them might even be candidates for the core game. Maybe. We'll see. One of the game modes that has been part of Overwatch for the longest time already is Capture the Flag. The thing is that historically Capture the Flag has not been very popular in Overwatch. It is in other games, but it doesn't seem to work. I mean, there is an audience for it, some people really like it, but that audience is rather small. That being said, while that initial iteration of Capture the Flag did not work out, over the years the Overwatch team has come up with some alternatives, different ways of approaching that same game mode. Like Capture the Flag Blitz. It is literally what it sounds like. Shorter distances, very fast. And it worked better. But the one I personally like the best is the one that they did for the first The Seraphim collaboration, that game event. The idea was that you needed to pick up tickets everywhere and then try and bring those tickets to a central point, basically to the register for the concert or something. Now, as soon as enough tickets were dropped in that central point, an NPC would spawn, and that was Junkrat, and he would have a light stick on his back, which you could interpret as a flag. Now, you have to defeat Junkrat, he would drop the light stick, and then the teams needed to capture that light stick as fast as possible and bring it back to that same point. At least that is how I remembered it went. In any case, it was a little much, but it definitely was a lot more fun than the normal Capture the Flag. I don't think this would work as a Stadium mode. In this current shape at least. But that whole light stick part did a few things right. The fact that the light stick or the flag would drop in a somewhat random place on a rather arena-shaped map, and that the drop point where you needed to drop it off was actually the same for both teams. Made this whole game mode more about battling each other while trying to get the objectives done, rather than taking advantage of certain perks or advantages that you have with a certain hero. It was less about the objects like a flag and more about, you know, just making sure that you kill enough people to get it done. Something like that would fit the whole Stadium lore perfectly. So that is one mode. But the second half of that Seraphim mode, where you needed to collect the tickets, also kind of inspired me for an idea. It could be something like a scavenger hunt. Instead of having these ticket machines that you need to destroy to get the tickets out, what if you get loot boxes that are hidden all over the map? You take the tickets, or let's say cash, out of the loot boxes, and you need to deposit it in a centralized point. The first team to get enough of the cash in a central point wins. But of course you can kill each other, you can drop the cash, and it could be picked up by an enemy or friendly player. And that way you break up an existing mode into separate modes, I think. Anyways, talking about existing game modes. How about a team deathmatch? The first team to get an X amount of kills wins. And that match always had quite an audience. Again, not the biggest one, but usually that is the free-for-all deathmatch, not the team deathmatch. And on top of that, those people tend to pick very specific heroes for that game mode. And since you are stuck in a certain comp in Stadium, I think it would benefit some heroes a little more to play team deathmatch than others. And on top of that, I'm actually quite curious to see what the impact would be on the cash flow, so to speak. I mean, if you make killing other players the focus of a game mode, that is definitely going to result in a big bump up in the amount of cash that is generated by both the teams, since a lot of that cash actually comes from you killing people. But I've seen that happen in other modes, like in the push mode. I've had amazing amounts of cash in one round, like 20k, because we just stalled and we just kept killing each other, which actually proves my point. So it's not going to be the easiest to pull off. Maybe worth a try though. Now, there's also a lot of game modes in other games that could inspire something for Stadium. Like Splatoon, for instance. What if you get a game mode where the goal is to paint a certain map in the colors of your team? as much as possible. The team that gets the most estates sprayed by the end of the match wins. Or the team that manages to do all of it, but I don't think that ever happens. Not sure. The thing is, of course, you also need to kill the other players to stop them from spray painting. It is basically kind of a twist on Team Deathmatch, I guess, which means it could run into those same issues, but it actually has a different goal. The goal is not to kill everybody else. The goal is to paint as much of the map as you can, and anybody can do it. Even the supports, the tank, everybody can contribute. Marvel Rivals actually had it for a limited time game mode somewhere in Season 0 or Season 1. And everybody was Jeff the Landshark because he actually sprays, you know, as an ability. Water, I presume. Actually, come to think of it. Never asked. Not sure. Now I'm starting to think it's just spit, which is kind of rude. Anyways, I think this game mode might be a tad too casual, colorful, I don't know. So let's turn to something more grim. Back in the days when I still played Halo Infinite, there was this one game mode that I enjoyed quite a lot, and it was called Oddball. And basically you had a skull spawning in the middle of the map in a, well, kind of neutral zone, and both teams would just dash in as fast as possible to try and grab the skull first and run off. Now the reason they run off is because they need to hold the skull, and the team that holds the skull will kind of tally up points, and the first team to hit a certain score will win. But if the player that was holding the skull got killed, it could be picked up by another player, and again, that could be a friendly player or an enemy player. The thing is, if I remember this correctly, whoever was holding the skull became more vulnerable over time. So the longer you were holding the skull, the easier you would get killed, the more damage you would take with every single shot. And on top of that, you were actually not able to use your gun. Well, they could use the skull to bash people with, but that was about it. But that all kind of forced the players to drop the skull when they wanted to defend themselves and swap it around to make sure that the debuff didn't kill them, which opened up a lot of opportunities for the other team to grab him, and it really was one of my favorite modes in Halo. At times it got hilarious. I killed some people with that skull. They were on my team, but nah, I'm kidding. Can't kill teammates. I tried. You know what? It would actually work in the context of Overwatch, because some heroes are going to be better at resisting that buff, while others will be a little easier to hide, and then there's going to be the supports that can help to keep people up. So everybody has their role to play. They just won't be able to use their abilities or their weapons while they're holding the skull. You can melee though. And let's not maybe use a skull. Maybe let's use something more for Overwatch. I don't know. What would that be? An Omnic brain? A pizza slice? A puppy? I'm just going over souvenirs. I'm still trying to make souvenirs relevant in some way. Yeah, it's not happening. Anyways, those were a few of my ideas. And I had other ideas, but none of them really had a chance of working. Because, well, for one, some of them were very lopsided. Let's say search and destroy, like in CSGO. You can't do that because you need the other round. You need to flip it around at some point. And then I was thinking about, you know, that brawl that we do with Junkenstein's Revenge with all the Omnics coming in. What if we do that, like in 2 parts of the map and the first to hit the score? But that's not the idea behind Overwatch. We need to be killing players, not bots. Although, some players turn out to be bots. Huh. Yeah, it's not easy making game modes in Overwatch. Good luck. But what mode would you add to Stadium? Let me know in the comments. For now, however, that was it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. It always helps me out. I also want to thank my patrons and YouTube members. You too can become a member over on patreon.com/theomnicpost and right here on YouTube to unlock exclusive rewards. If you have a few minutes left, maybe check out one of my other videos. But above all, take care of yourself, take care of each other. Bye bye.